So I don't want to like downplay it either. You know, these life expectancies are extraordinarily accurate. If you look at, I mean, if you want to know how good life insurance companies are at predicting mortality, just look at what happened in the 2008-2009 financial services
What are their
crisis.
profit margins? Don't they have a legal obligation to pay out 91%?
Yeah, they have well, I mean, 98% of all life insurance never pays a death claim. 98% of all life insurance policies lapse. Only 2% of life insurance policies actually pay a death claim.
Whoa.
98% of all life insurance policies lapse.
Well, that's why they didn't go out of business.
Yeah, that's why they didn't
People
go out of
just pay
business.
for a while and then stop.
Yeah. So when we had, 364 banks fail? You didn't have one life insurance company fail. Not
That
one.
doesn't tell me that their data is good. It tells me that 98% of people lapse their policy and they're just raking in the money.
Where their data gets good is that the data that they have, which doesn't exist in other clinical studies or hospital chains or research foundations for universities, is that they know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for 370 million lives, or maybe even more.
Basically,
and
AI. They've created an AI model that predicts how and when you're going to die.
They can pull that in. And so there are what we call mortality factors, right? There are credits and there's debits. And then there's something called comorbidities, right? So you're on an actuarial curve, I'm on an actuarial curve, everybody in this room is on one, right?
How dare you?
How dare you?
I'm going to live forever, Gary. Didn't you know?
You can defy the odds, but you're on one, brother. So it's like,
Yes.
okay, you're a 37-year-old male, you have a life expectancy of X, so bang. But the life insurance company doesn't care where you are on an actuarial curve, right? They want your specific mortality before they put $50 million or $75 million worth of risk on your life. Because if they do, only one thing matters.
Do they DNA test?
They do now.
Oof,
Yeah.
that's a little scary.
Yeah, they do now.
Do I love that or do I hate that? As an entrepreneur, I love it because it means that you can get better. As a person that may want a life insurance policy at some point, I hate it. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was allowed, in that underwriting department, you could get a blood test once, but pretty much any blood marker that you wanted. So if you wanted to see if their chances of something that was chronic becoming non-chronic, or you wanted to, for example, we would see vast amount of misdiagnosis in medical records. And that's what I did. I didn't get my knowledge even from the 8 years of undergrad and grad school I went to. I went to undergraduate for biology. I went to grad school for human biology. So I have another 4-year degree in human biology, where I really got the majority of my knowledge was from reading medical records 8 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week for almost 20 years. All I did was do medical record extraction. When you start reading that voluminous amount of medical record, you start to see how the practice of medicine is done, and you start to see the patterns in the practice of medicine, and you start to see the downside because you see the number of misdiagnoses that are going on. Where patients that have simple nutrient deficiencies like vitamin D3 are diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, put on a corticosteroid, which eats their joints over the next 6 years, causes them to have a joint replacement, and then reduces their mobility, what we call your ambulatory profile, and then brings in all of the diseases from further down your future that exacerbate with reduced mobility. And you find that so many of these things, methotrexate that they put people on for arthritic conditions, which gives you an MTHFR gene mutation that you didn't have, shuts down the ability for your body to use folate and turn it into methylfolate, creating this massive deficiency. And initially it's put into your body to be anti-inflammatory, but now it actually shuts your gut down, disrupts your mood, begins to cause contents in your gut to putrefy. And you develop not only gut issues, which is the primary result of these pharmaceuticals, but you also start to get mood disorders and personality alterations because you now are creating a deficiency in the body that you didn't otherwise create. The same thing, by the way, we would see in cholesterol statin medications. Prolonged use of statins suppressing cholesterol, which is a construction material, not a fuel source. It is a construction material that we use to make every cell wall, every cell membrane, and every hormone in the human body. When we start to deplete these fuel sources, you would begin to see significant hormone disruption and other consequences down the line of over suppressing cholesterol in the body. You see the same thing in psychiatric medications. The studies are being published now that we actually saw the damage from and during my career, and that is that, we knew that people that were on antidepressants for prolonged periods of time had significantly higher rates of suicide, and nobody was talking about it. They had significantly more severe depression when they got off. They reported massive, what they would call crushing depression after prolonged use of antidepressants. And prolonged use of antidepressants, they would start to go into their primary care and their psychiatrist and complain that they were actually starting to have suicidal thoughts that were leading them to certain actions. And you would see this in the medical record because the patient history would be in there. And so you saw this voluminous amount of not just medical misdiagnosis, but this voluminous amount of modifiable risk factors that were in the mortality prediction. So you put somebody onto a bell curve, and now we're trying to decide, are they going to die earlier than their average population, or are they going to die later than their average population? And so you start to take away what's called mortality debits. They have diabetes, they're hypertensive, they're morbidly obese. And each one of those would give you a debit. But if you had all three of those in the same biome, they would get a massive debit, because being morbidly obese, type 2 diabetic, and hypertensive in the same body is way worse than having any one of those conditions on their own. So these were called comorbidities, and they would dramatically accelerate your rate of death, right? They would move you way to the left of the bell curve. And what was astounding was that the majority of these factors that were moving people from the center of the bell curve, of the mortality curve, to the left, meaning they were going to die earlier. This was called the mortality multiplier, the statistical chance that they would die before the mean, right? This is called the mortality multiplier. What was moving people to the left were modifiable risk factors, meaning had I just been able to get on the phone and contact that person, I could have made a dramatic change.
What are the standard ones? Smoking, being sedentary, loss of muscle mass.
Smoking, being sedentary, loss of muscle mass. I mean, there, clearly sarcopenia, age-related muscle wasting, which is why you hear a lot of people say if you want to live a long time, lift heavy weight. That's actually very, very true. But things like, like you would see anemia, for example.
Is this a super common one?
Super common. People are anemic. And why are they anemic?
As they're getting older?
Yes, as they're getting older, but it's getting into younger and younger ages. In people in their early 50s, late 40s, mid 40s are having hormone imbalance. And why are they having hormone imbalances? Not because their hormones are necessarily, their testicles, for example, have lost the ability to secrete testosterone, but because they have deficiencies in things like DHEA and vitamin D3.
The building blocks of
the building blocks, right?